Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today we have a very special company. We've got INFINEX on the podcast today. We're joined by Kain, a legend in crypto. He founded Synthetix back in 2017, helped spark the DeFi Summer in 2020, earning him the title, the father of modern agriculture. I can only hope I get such a title in the future. And now he's back with his latest venture, INFINEX, launched in 2023 to make DeFi more accessible with multi-chain support, secure and non-custodial access. And then we've got another guest. Jed, I'll let you introduce yourself so I don't do all the yapping.
Jed and I worked together before on an earlier startup pre-Synthetix, which was the startup that kind of got me into crypto called Blue Shift. So Jed and I guess, have worked together for on and off for 10 years. He is a recovering Web 2 maxi, I guess you might say. We've been kind of dragging him into Web 3 and crypto over the last year or so. And yeah, it's been really exciting because he is basically leading the architecture of INFINEX, which is kind of the most important aspect of the platform, and our CTO. So very happy to have him answer the questions accurately rather than me hand waving.
Nice well, absolutely. I do a lot of hand waving on the podcast. So with that in mind, Jed, can you tell us a little bit about INFINEX's mission to accelerate the extinction of centralized exchanges?
Yeah, I'll take this one, actually, because Kain has said this a few times now. And I think something that we talk about a lot is the idea that everyone who's doing crypto is not really using crypto, right? We've spent 10 years building some amazing systems that are very good at being non-custodial, and then everyone goes and puts all of their sort of value in a centralized database. And it just seems like this has to end. It's not even that we want it to end, it's that this doesn't make sense as a way for the industry to move forward. We've done 10 years of this. It's time for something new to come along and actually change that pattern so that we get people genuinely self-custodying their own crypto and doing stuff on chain. We've got to sort of address the reasons why people are using the centralized exchanges if we want that to happen.
Well, actually, I have a spicy comment, surprisingly, that somebody left on my LinkedIn this morning because I was talking about, bases, revenues, and how Kraken released an L2, and we're seeing more of the centralized exchanges start to adopt on-chain behavior. So talk to us a little bit about how you see people moving away from centralized exchanges and what are some of the obstacles they're currently facing and how you guys hope to circumvent that.
So we describe INFINEX as the UX layer for crypto. And UX is really quite a broad thing. There's what you think about when you sign up for something, when you use a user interface, but it's really more about, do you understand what you're about to do? Is what you're most likely to do actually the right thing? And I think this is one thing that compared to sort of DeFi, centralized exchanges have just nailed over the years. There's such a lower number of kinds of education that you need to do to go through to get onto a centralized exchange. You sort of start with this question of there's always a job to be done. It's I would like to hold some Bitcoin, right? And the answer is, well, if you sign up and you go through your KYC process, there's a button there which says buy Bitcoin. And all of the rest of the things it's going to ask you to do, from filling out forms to, the way you sign in with email and the way you get your password and even set up your 2FA, it's all very familiar. It's the same sort of thing you go through with online banking, right? Whereas in DeFi, we ask people to learn a lot of things before they even get to sort of step one. And then once you do get to step one, I don't know, can I get Bitcoin on Synthetix?
No, you can't. No,
so
exactly.
There's all these sort of frictions in the way, and we really see it as our job to address those frictions so that the things that people want to do are as easy, genuinely on chain as they are in centralized exchanges.
So you're saying when somebody signs up, we shouldn't just give them a scary seed phrase and that.
Oh, definitely. That's absolutely the answer.
Let's talk about some of the UX challenges that people currently face, because many people here will be founders, builders, crypto natives, people that probably haven't actually signed on to crypto in a long time, haven't gone through that beginner or normie stage. Talk to us a little bit about some of the existing frictions and what you guys are hoping to, kind of remove from that process. Is it hey, we're just a account abstraction and chain abstraction all the way down?
Well, sorry, I think just one point on this, right, that's been kind of floating around a little bit, even on crypto Twitter. Like Cami from the Defiant had this, very spicy tweet the other day, which was like, guys, like, please, this is really bad. Like, what are we doing, right? We're pretending like this is all fine, L2 fragmentation, etc. Like, this is just not okay for a user. And what I think it's led to is this like attrition of the original user base, actually, right? Like the people who've been on chain for a long time are doing fewer and fewer on chain transactions because we've just made it hard. And it's like after a certain amount of time, like, there's only so much effort you can put into like learning things continuously. And we just don't make it easy for people to do things on chain. And so I think that there's a lot of people who've been in the space for a long time, pre-DeFi Summer, DeFi people who are just like, it's too hard.
Yeah, and to put it in perspective for listeners that maybe been in the game for a while, okay, you sign up for a new wallet and now you've got a seed phrase that you need to take care of. You've got, I don't know why that's there. We sign up for a new wallet. Now a seed phrase you have to take care of. Then you've got a ton of different chains you can operate on. If somebody sends you a new coin, you got to hope to God that your wallet just automatically accepts it, or you actually have to import the contract address. So talk to us a little bit about like some of the features of INFINEX and what you guys are hoping like will make DeFi and like on-chain transactions. Cause I think we both stand behind the mission that more people will be on chain, hopefully in the future. So talk to us a little bit about the features you guys are hoping to implement there.
So you asked about chain abstraction, and I think it's like, imagine if you wanted to use Facebook and the first thing you had to do was log onto the data center where Facebook servers was. And you have to know where that is. And then you want to get an email and you're like, oh wait, I've got to go to Google servers now. They're over in Utah somewhere probably. Like, you would kind of have to go through this whole process. If you had to know where the infrastructure was for the web in order to use it, then the barriers to entry would be so much harder, and the friction of using one thing or using another thing, right? And if you then had to pay for those services using, gas is obviously like, it's not just paying the gas, it's knowing how to pay for the gas, it's knowing holding the right token for the chain that you want to operate on the right chain. Like, it's just all of these steps for the user in front of doing the thing that you want to do. And I think that that's part of it. When we get down to the UX, you sort of talk to people who've been on chain for a while, and there's a few go-to things. Like, everyone knows about the seed phrase safety issue. Everyone knows about gas, and they're like, oh, gas abstraction or chain abstraction. It's like, no, really, it starts with knowing what to do, right? For most people coming on chain, you don't know what to do. And we've kind of had this Web 2 maxim for a long time. What is that?
I don't know. It's funny though. It's funny.
Right over your face.
Yeah.
We've had this Web 2 maxim forever called "Don't make me think." Right? That was kind of one of the guiding lights of getting a bunch of people to actually start going online back in the day, was "Don't make me think." And crypto is almost designed to make you think and to make you worry. Right? So these two things, these are the biggest inhibitors from what we've found to people actually going on chain. It's not even gas. It's like just that fear of, am I doing the right thing? Do I know what I'm like? You can't Google which protocols to use because it's full of Medium posts, which are all going to scam you, right? Like, even just knowing where to go and get the information from, you don't feel confident. And confidence is like, if you've got a thing you want to do, great. Let's make people confident about doing it. I think that's really the key to kind of unlocking something feeling easy for people, is that we've solved the problems, both making them go and research weird stuff that is not the thing they were trying to do, and also make them feel confident about the steps that they need to take to do it. It's like, yeah, holding crypto is kind of risky enough. Like, I would rather just worry about that, not also how do I learn how to bridge from this protocol to this protocol. And if you make a mistake, you've lost all your money and no one's going to help you. Right. So let's just take that fear out of it for people.
Yeah, I always found that to be like a funny argument. People are like, oh, like people want to go bankless. I'm like, I don't know. If they lose their money, they definitely would love to have some kind of intermediate there. But talk to us a little bit about like how this is all going to work in practice. So we talked about, chain abstraction. We talked about, gas abstraction. Or is it functioning with intents under the hood? What are some of the like technical implementation details that you guys have had to put into INFINEX?
So this has been an interesting one, because over the last year, we've really swung this pendulum backwards and forwards a bit in terms of where are we holding this, like what systems are we using? There's so much infrastructure at this point that you can do a lot of the things that we need to do, the question has become, how do we put all these things together to actually deliver this experience for users? And where we've landed is we've got quite a sophisticated front end. One of the things I think that's really cool about INFINEX is we have actually got a huge design team.
You don't even need to say sophisticated. Like we
have
an application, we have a front end application, right? Like that's actually like we're already into uncharted territory just by having an application at the front end that like does stuff for the user.
Yeah, we've got a back end, which I hear.
That's even crazier.
Yeah.
Even crazier,
Like,
right?
what are you doing?
Yeah.
This was contentious on day one, but we've got like the sort of usual fat web app stack going, running the front end and the back end of INFINEX. And then it's the back end that's talking to the chain. So we're abstracting gas through Gelato. We're landing transactions through a system that's designed to be like really resilient about trying to do a thing. And if it doesn't work, it picks it up again. We've actually got the same framework driving any of our on-chain and off-chain work that we do, because we do a lot of stuff off-chain, right? Like to do the on-chain stuff, you end up doing a lot of orchestration of state management, transactions, like all these different things happen actually off-chain as well. So we've got one system that's actually sitting across both of those that we can use to sort of detect when something goes wrong and recover from it. It's funny because you want to trust the chain. That's really the source of truth. At the same time, you also can't trust the chain because the first response you get back from it is sometimes just the wrong one, right? You've got to kind of keep checking to make sure if you're sort of looking at the first thing that happened when someone did something, like, did that actually happen? It's a really interesting kind of pattern of needing to trust but verify and then trust. Sort of like you double down on the trust of what's on chain through the sort of early to medium term life of the transaction. And then the rest of it is this on-chain infrastructure that we've got. So we've looked at a lot of the stuff that's emerged over the last year, like the account abstraction work that's happened. We've kind of got our own version of it. So we've got these smart contracts that sort of implement the right parts of that for us that fit in nicely with the rest of the system that we've got designed. And then we're also using Turnkey, which is currently our sort of service that we use to make sure that we are non-custodial. They also are non-custodial. They hold the ability to sign on both like EVM chains and Solana. And so we can, and they also support passkeys. So a big piece of INFINEX is the user holding a passkey, which is their piece of self-custody. Nothing can happen without that passkey, and you can't get it off the user. Right? So at no point is it like there is something in our stack that touches the user's private key. That's their operating system is handling that for us. And our web app is just passing passkeys are basically crypto for Web 2, right? We give them something, the passkey signs it, and we can verify that without ever seeing the private key. So Turnkey can translate that passkey signature for us into a signature that we can natively recognize on EVM and Solana. And that's how we actually land transactions. So we've kind of built out this large system on all the pieces of it work together to ship what we're trying to build.
And one thing that may keep people on like centralized exchanges are like more complex orders or, more operations that they might not get from something as simple as like Uniswap, but they might get from like a, pair trading. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys have tried to implement some of the more, we'll call it sophisticated features of these like centralized exchanges into INFINEX.
Yeah. So I think like the starting point for INFINEX was build a perps platform, like a single feature, right? Which was the wrong approach, but this is where we started. The approach was, let's build this single feature, perps, isolated in a platform using an on-chain execution engine. And then we will, kind of build around that, wrap around it so that we can, do things like limit orders and stop loss, take profit, et cetera, more advanced order types. I think it's kind of interesting that no one has really landed like advanced order types well on chain. I think there's a bunch of reasons for it, but I think one of the reasons is like a lack of demand on some level, right? The people who are trading, particularly perps on chain, a lot of it is incentivized trading, to put it mildly, right? And so people don't really care. They're happy to market match the market buy button, right? They don't really care if they've got like stop loss limit, et cetera. And so, there's different platforms we've implemented in different ways. I do think that if we want to kind of credibly bring people from centralized exchanges onto DEXs, we need to actually nail these order types. And I think probably some kind of hybrid approach will be the right approach, where there's like off-chain signatures that can be stored to execute transactions. I think INFINEX is in a better place than most DEXs because those DEX front ends are not stateful. They're thin clients, and so they don't really have the ability to hold a transaction or hold a signature and then execute it based on some conditions. And again, different people have tried to solve this problem. It's not like no one's tried. They have. It's just it hasn't really landed, I think. But one of the reasons why is I think the demand side has been missing for that. And so I think that INFINEX has a good chance of landing this. The other angle I think that this will be solved from is, there's a bunch of extremely performant chains that are coming online, whether it's, Mega ETH, Monad, there's a bunch of them that are trying to get to a point where you can just run an order book on chain. Which means that you can actually submit limit orders and stop loss and take profit and, match them, et cetera. Obviously, these chains are, still yet to come online. And so we'll see how successful that is. But I think those are kind of the two approaches. One is like make the chains much, much faster and then abstract away where those chains are. So abstract away the bridging and different asset types, et cetera, just make it accessible from a single interface. And then the alternative approach is take the existing execution engines and order types and try and make them better by being a bit more opinionated and stateful in the application layer.
Yeah, and then one point of the centralized exchanges is like the on and off ramps. How are you guys kind of approaching this with INFINEX? Because I think this is probably the one area that's tough to shake the centralized exchanges away from, because just onboarding and on ramping and off ramp is tough. How are you guys kind of approaching that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, it feels like another one where on-ramping and off-ramping hasn't really been a focus of DeFi. Like people sort of a while ago just said, well, almost everyone's going to need a centralized exchange account, right? And so, let's let them deal with the on-ramping and off-ramping, and, we'll kind of pick up the scraps later, which obviously is not ideal. There's people like Uniswap that have gone, no, this is actually not okay. We need to directly on-ramp people. And so they're working on those solutions. And I think the on-ramp solutions have gotten significantly better over the last 2 to 3 years. So we're in a much better place in terms of choice of different on-ramps and off-ramps. And I think that will get better. Again, it's a bit weird to have an on-ramp and off-ramp in a DeFi app when you don't have an account. Like, you don't maintain state about the user. So are you, KYCing the address? Like there's just the wrong set of patterns, right? And so I think with INFINEX, because you have an account and you log into that account can be approved for different fiat gateways depending on where you are. And, we can make on-ramping and off-ramping much easier. But I think there's another element to this, which is like, back in the olden days, right? If you go back to 2015, 2016, even earlier, most of the people who got onboarded into Bitcoin, it was a friend who onboarded them, right? Like it was very P2P, I'll send you some Bitcoin, that sort of thing. That dropped off at some point due to maybe just, general inertia or the people who are willing to do it getting sick, I've onboarded. I would
say it was very scary. I remember being in Denmark for a Bitcoin ATM company and doing the most drug dealing, non-drug deal that ever existed, where we showed up with a briefcase full of money to get exchanged for Bitcoin to put into an ATM. And I was just like, this is very scary.
Yeah, it was not an ideal thing, but low value transactions, right? Like let's say you have a friend and you want to onboard them with $50, right? We've got a view of how we can do that much more efficiently in a way that doesn't then mean that you are now responsible for their crypto life for the rest of time, right? And like, I think this is also part of it is like, there's only so many people, you know, my mother, I'm happy to onboard her. I still have control of her private keys. I've got backups of them. I've got her Binance password. Like, I am her backstop, right? I can't do that for like 10 people. It's too much effort and work, right? So we need an on-ramping, onboarding solution that we can be confident in, that if we say, hey, here you go, you know, we can sort of let the person figure it out from themselves for there, and they're not going to blow themselves up.
Yeah, I think it's good to kind of call out the distinction between on-ramping versus onboarding. I'd say if we can onboard a lot of people, if we reduce the onboarding friction into crypto, then there are a lot of people pointed at the on-ramping problem in, like, you've got P2P, you've got other sort of things that happen, and then you've also got a lot of like fiat on off ramps popping up in a bunch of different jurisdictions around the world, right? So like we can and will integrate with them eventually, but very much the onboarding process is like, I just don't think that anyone's actually solved that, and I don't think enough people are trying to solve that right now.
All right, builders. Well, a good idea right there. Go run off it with it. Let's talk a little bit about we used to love this exercise at BlackRock called the life of a transaction. So talk a little bit about the onboarding process into INFINEX, and then what they can do when they're actually inside the app. And congrats to you guys for building an app, because it's so few and far between in this industry. So talk to us a little bit about like, hey, when they, you know, sign up, and then into like, hey, now they're making transactions.
So there's a few different things that you can do at the moment in INFINEX, but I'm going to just be a bit cheeky and talk about like the coming soon version, because we've just wrapped up our whole patron sale. And
see, I told you we'd onboard him into crypto.
We're deep in build.
Don't worry about the current version. V2. It's all about V2.
Look, it's a more interesting answer if I can answer the V2 answer.
Sure.
So look, the onboarding thing, right? We have that as sort of 2 clicks at the moment, and the next job is to get that down to 1. And I want to go from like, I've put in a username and I've signed with my passkey, or I've created a passkey, and you're done, right? The next thing you can do is your first on-chain transaction. Now, we built this game called Bull Run at the moment that we've got a bunch of people playing, and it's sort of turning into almost like an onboarding process itself. Like, come and learn what trading is like through this cool card game. And we've got a bunch of ideas about sort of what we can get people to do. But the reality is, as soon as you open a pack, you've just like run a blast entropy function call to randomize the cards that you're getting in that pack. And that's actually your first on-chain transaction. And something that I've seen other smooth, like really nice onboarding workflows land people in when you sign up for a wallet or something, the first thing is like mint an NFT. There's a bunch of like, you can just, all right, now you've got a wallet, mint an NFT. That's kind of your proof of concept if you've done an on-chain transaction. So it's a little bit like that, but I like the idea of this, like if the cards are also NFTs, like giving people some utility from day one, rather than sort of, okay, you've just done a toy thing, but you're never going to, like, no one's ever going to care about that NFT that you just minted. The next job is really to get crypto into someone's account so they can do something with it, which is the on-ramping thing we were just talking about. And we've got a few ideas about how to get people to sort of start out an account with crypto, or to make that like at least at a P2P level really easy. But once you've like, all right, let's say that you've got a deposit address, you're going to get some crypto into your account. The next goal would be to like, the answer should, like the next click should really be whatever you want. Right. If you want to swap into a particular token you just heard about, that should be another 1 click. If you want to, pretty much anything, right? Like stake, just start earning APY. The number of people that I speak to who are in that sort of crypto curious, but more normie sort of space, where they bought maybe ETH a few years ago, and like they've just got no idea that you could be at least earning yield on your ETH. Like, that's cool. A life decision, just hold ETH. That's great. But like, at least earn yield on that, right? And people don't know even this exists. And so sort of putting this in front of people and making everything like just a click away, you don't really need to know then what you're using to do that. Not in that first instance. You don't really need to know what chain it's running on. Like, we shouldn't tell you what chain you're doing things on unless there's some important decision that you need to make related to the chain that it's on. So maybe once you start getting into some of the Aave stuff, like, okay, there is actually a difference if I take out a loan on this chain or that chain. right? Because they've got different liquidity, or there's something else going on, or there's incentives. I mean, even in the system today, like deposit some USDB and you start earning something on Blast, whereas if you just have USDC sitting there on mainnet, like not the same story. So the chains do start to matter, but that should be an answer to like a question that someone has, not something they have to learn up front.
Yeah, like you onboard someone into MetaMask and it's like, okay, cool, which chain do you want to go to? And they're like, what? Like,
which ones are good?
Yeah, like all of them.
Yeah,
like it's kind of crazy, right? Like it's you know, to that point that Cami made on Twitter the other day, like it's become it was already horrifically bad and it's now much worse. Like you would think that was impossible for us to make it worse, and yet we have, right? You know, and like I think Vitalik tweeted yesterday about how it's going to come much sooner, that like you know, interop between all the L2s will be much better. And I think from a technical perspective, that is definitely true. Like interop between chains is going to be better, but then someone is going to need to leverage that to build an application that abstracts it away, right? It doesn't just disappear because the tech is better, right? Like that's one thing that we've learned in crypto is like better tech does not reduce the complexity. Someone needs to actually come in and reduce the complexity. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're saying, okay, you know, Jax just onboarded you and sent you 50 USDC. If it was on Arbitrum, we'll show you the stuff you can do on Arbitrum. We're not going to show you stuff that you can do on Solana or on Optimism. But if you sent them some Sol, we'll show them some Sol stuff. Like, okay, you can wrap your Sol and get Cheeto Sol and earn yield, or like we'll be opinionated about what we're showing you can do based on what you have, rather than just being like, here's a million things that you could potentially do, and most of them are on a different chain to the one you're on. Like, it's really honestly crazy. Like,
yeah.
Well, also like taking that a step further, right? Let's say you do have your first Sol. Someone's just like, here's a Sol. You're like, cool. I would like some ETH, right? I've like,
first of all, friendship over. if I give you Sol and you cheat it for ETH, like I'm out. The friendships, you're canceled.
Like that's fair. I mean, you've come a long way.
Yeah, I know. I really
year,
have.
So
yeah, I gave you Sol for a reason, my friend. I don't want you dumping on my head.
I was trying to pick something that involved bridging. We've got Sol and we've got ETH. So take your pick.
Sure. Pudgy penguins. I want to buy a pudgy
penguin.
There
you go. You've got one Sol and you want to buy a pudgy penguin. Good luck.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, like it really wants to be action centric. Right? It shouldn't be like, oh, I've got this thing and now I can only do these weird things and I can't see why I can't do that other thing. Right? Like no other popular software in the world works like that. That's just not a thing. Right? You're like, I'm going to flip it around. What's going on with chains there? In fact, centralized exchanges don't.
But yeah, it's quite interesting, this like peculiarity where people in crypto too are like obsessed with different chains. Where it'd be like me wearing like a MongoDB shirt everywhere and being like, if you don't like MongoDB, you ain't friends with me. Yeah, I'm out. Sorry, that's enough.
MongoDB.
Yeah.
I got wrecked.
Yeah.
The thing is, right, if you there are MongoDB meetups. I mean, like I personally was using MongoDB for a while, lesson learned, right? We've all done things. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there are some really big apps running on MySQL. Right? There are a lot of big apps running on Postgres. None of the users care. Right? Like you can go to the meetups, you can get into the tech, you can really get into some, and we have in the office got into some
they don't care and they don't know. My mom never goes to a website and is like, oh, MongoDB, oh, how great.
You know why Facebook never took off? Because it was written in PHP. That's what was wrong with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. People don't care about the underlying tech, right? But the thing is, we've created this double-edged sword of incentives, right? Where the underlying tech has been monetized in this distribution game, right? Imagine if the MongoDB neckbeard crew we're like all super rich from like shilling Mongo. I mean, that kind of happened for a while.
Yeah, it kind of did happen.
Like,
No, it'd be like, okay,
happen.
if GCP credits or AWS credits started fluctuating in value, and there's now an open like DEXs on like,
you would have warfare in the streets, right? Like there would be literally like pitched battles over which cloud compute platform people were using, but it's just not monetized like that. There's no GCP token yet. There's no AWS token, right? Like if tech worked like that, then we would have, and again, would it be good? Would it be better? It would be different.
It would be different.
It would be different.
Would be thought, right?
What was
like,
before? Yeah, people would be like,
actually,
I have AWS and I needed to pump, and I need you to stop liking GCP. And here's all the reasons why. Like, don't you know there'd be like GCP FUD about like the chips in it are not real. It would be crazy.
But it's interesting that this happens in crypto at the infrastructure level, because in the rest of the development community, these almost cult-like approaches do exist. Like look at Ruby on Rails, for example, right? Like this, that is really hard to sort of separate the framework from the personality.
Imagine if there was a Ruby token.
I mean, if there was a Ruby token, some people would have gotten even richer. But it's like people basically do have Ruby tokens, right? You can invest 10 years of your career learning how to be really good with that tool.
Right.
And that is another incentive that drives people like create meetups, go and, build communities and go and tell everyone that this other one is terrible, because it's not even necessarily that you're fudding it. It's just that you're so deeply invested in this thing and it drives user behavior at the end of the day, but only for a small number of users, only the enthusiasts. The people actually using the applications don't really care. I want to pull in this thread like one more little bit here, because that's sort of true. We're coming at it from an application perspective, and it's true that it doesn't matter, right? But if you come at it from a developer's perspective, if you've got a closed system like X, it doesn't really matter what it's built in. I don't know what their database is. Like, I don't know what different things I need to install. But if I've got something else that's open source, right? Something that is not that centralized, like Mastodon, for example, or Blue Sky, like it actually does matter what those things are built in. It matters, can I run them? Can I put them on my MacBook? Can I actually boot it up, right? Like what versions of the frameworks, what versions of the execution environments do I need to run that in order to be to hack on it for a start, but also if I wanted to have some sort of ability to run that myself, even if the centralized versions went down. Right? And this is the ethos of where crypto has come from. We're kind of, I think, at this inflection point between acknowledging that to get mass adoption, we need apps and we need things where people don't care about the underlying technology. But I don't think we can actually step it all the way back from it doesn't matter. It does matter that I can run the chains. It does matter that these protocols exist and these things can, all of the stuff that you can do in INFINEX should be things that you could do if you just had MetaMask. That's kind of, I think, the ideal state to get to. We don't want to take away from that ability for people to actually really go deep on the technology, have these opinions, and do these things if INFINEX were to stop.
This is the thing. This is the reason why INFINEX is so powerful, or anything like INFINEX, right? This is the reason why this is the next era of crypto, is a very usable, UX-friendly wrapper for all of DeFi makes DeFi better, right? In a way that Binance does not make DeFi better. Arguably, if they pump the tokens, maybe it makes DeFi a little bit better, creates a little bit better distribution, a little bit more awareness, but it's very indirect. Whereas INFINEX as a wrapper of all of DeFi makes the person who's going direct to DeFi have a better experience as well. It's very reinforcing, right? And so, it's not zero sum, it's positive sum. The more people use INFINEX and use this DeFi infra, the better the direct open version of DeFi, whatever that is, right? The MetaMask version of DeFi, because they are interoperable. So it is better that we're using Aave, right? It's better that we're using Aave than building a closed source version of Aave. I don't think that a version of INFINEX where we took all the protocols and forked them onto our own chain, and then we're running them inside this forked chain that was closed source. I don't think that you could do it. And there would be some advantages to it, but there would also be disadvantages. But I just don't think that ideologically would work. It's not the like, it's better than Binance. Like, it is still in a really, if you squint,
like if it's transparent, it's better than Binance.
Yeah.
And obviously the transparency thing just goes to FTX so quickly.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can deposit something into your INFINEX account and see it in an interface that looks closer to a centralized exchange, right? And the user experience is closer, and then you can just go on chain and you can see it. I have my INFINEX deposit address in Ravi, and I can pop it up and I can see the same stuff, except for the Solana things. Actually, it undercounts my wallet balance. So, we're a bit off script here, but it's.
I think like it does speak to the point of like, this technology is better because it is open, right? And open source is better because it's open. It enables people to do things that they couldn't otherwise do, right? And so I think this idea of using open source technology, using open, transparent protocols is really good. And it's the reason why it's good is because it gets better for everyone, right? It's not like you're going in and taking this thing and making your own version of it. It gets better. And like, I think in like the Linux community, there was this debate for a while of like, forked versions of Linux that were, open source, but like there was, different monetization strategies. And there was a whole war around like how that played out and who was good and who was bad and, who was doing the right thing and who was doing the wrong thing, who was contributing back to the kernel and this whole thing. The good thing about, I would say, DeFi protocols and Ethereum and Solana as open networks is like, unless you're going to fork the entire thing and try and build your own version of it, you can't help but contribute to it. If you put liquidity into Aave, everyone's experience of Aave gets better. Like that is like the quintessential value of open source and open access to different protocols is why DeFi is so good. And so INFINEX will make DeFi better, primarily because it'll make it accessible to a whole new range of people. But even for the people who don't want to go through that portal, who want to go direct via Ravi or MetaMask, it gets better for them too. It's better for everyone.
Yeah, and I think this ties into, you guys just wrapped up a Patreon NFT sale where you guys were able to raise, I think, 60 million plus. Talk to us a little bit about like, what do you think attributed to that like successful raise and like people really buying into the vision there?
Just brute force, honestly. Like it was not an easy process at all. And I'll put my hand up and say, I really thought it was going to be an easy process. I really did. I was like, this is going to be so easy, guys. Don't even worry.
Come with me. Look what we can do.
I know.
What we should do? We should make it harder.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah, we added difficulty wherever we could, right? Inject difficulty. I think but why did it work in spite of itself, right? Like why do people get behind it? I think people see this. Like they see that we have been sort of operating in this era of crypto, which, call it the sex era, right? Post Mt. Gox, everyone just said, oh yeah, like local Bitcoins is cool, but I'd rather just go onto a website and sell and buy Bitcoin, right? I don't want to be carrying sacks of cash around, and so the local P2P version of crypto really got supplanted very quickly, with centralized exchanges. And that's like now, a decade plus of this era of crypto, right? Meanwhile, we built underlying infrastructure to get people off centralized exchanges, but it hasn't worked yet. We've got all the enthusiasts. All the enthusiasts were like, this is the best thing we've ever seen. It's amazing. Love Aave, love Maker, love Uniswap, love Jupiter. All of this stuff is incredible. But it's a small bubble of people, right? We haven't been able to break out into the wider community. And so we have this kind of bifurcated crypto community, whereas there's most of the people living on centralized exchanges, and then a small enthusiast crowd that are living in DeFi land, living on chain. And we need to reunite them. Like that, we need to bring all of these people on chain. I think Jed said at the beginning, like it's just inevitable. We can't keep allowing centralized platforms to run crypto, right? So if we can do that and we can bring everyone on chain, then we have this very powerful network effect where the experience of crypto gets better for everyone, right? And it's open and transparent. And so I think that like this is something that is, again, it's what we sort of see, and I think it's what everyone sees. It's like, it's not a controversial idea that we need to replace centralized exchanges. It's just that everyone has heard it for so long. They're like, cool story, bro. Like, okay, like,
future of finance fatigue.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, cool. We've been trying to do this and we failed. And so I think that's where the brute force came in. It really took a lot to overcome the sort of inherent objections of like, yeah, but everyone's trying to do this and it hasn't worked, right? And so we were like, no, we're doing this differently, right? We have different technology. We're implementing it differently. We're making a different set of trade-offs. And we've brought people from the real world who have experience actually delivering applications. And they're like, what? You're crazy, right? And so, and look, we absolutely did not land this straight away. We did not, right? We were so far off in our initial version of this, right? And it took quite a while for us to like work through and get to this point. But by the time we got to like September of this year, I think we had a very credible story for going after centralized exchanges and replacing them. And so the people who've been waiting for this, not everyone, I think everyone's been waiting for it, but some of the people who've been waiting for this for the last decade are like, this is maybe it, right? But it took a while. They've been burned so many times. They're like, oh, please don't burn me again, right? And so I think we've got everyone on board. Everyone's very excited about it. And this was the goal. The goal was to build the biggest tent we could possibly build, bring everyone from the Solana community, everyone from the ETH community, all the L2s, all the Alt L1s, whether it's Sui or Aptos or Avalanche or BSC or Tron or whatever, bring everyone into the same tent and be like, guys, we're going to build stuff for everyone. Let's stop this internal strife and let's focus on the rest of the world, and we can do this. And so I think we're there. And I think that's why it was ultimately successful. But it was a much harder sell than I thought it was going to be.
Almost, was it snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. But Talk to us a little bit about where people can interact with you both online and get involved with INFINEX.
Well, Jed has a blog post that he's just about to publish, which I think if you are a technologist, right, if you're an engineer or someone who cares deeply about the tech, it's going to give a bit more of an understanding, I guess, of why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, a bit of the background behind that. So that will be out this week.
Hopefully around the time. I don't know how long it takes to get these pods out, but we'll try and dovetail.
Guys, if you're listening, it's out.
There on Twitter.
Yeah, so Twitter? My hand, we can put it in the show notes or whatever, but we'll drop in my handle and Jed's.
Awesome. Well, guys, every link will be in the description. I want to thank both of you guys for coming on here. It was super informative, and I'm very excited for the end of centralized exchanges and using more of INFINEX. So excited to see the blog post come out, excited to use the app more, and congratulations on building a Web3, and everyone go get involved with the guests here. Let's continue building the future.